On Sunday, 27th January 1974, 2-year-old Matthew Allen Allred was playing in the backyard of his Florida home in Claremelle City, some 7 miles from Tampa. He had 3 elder siblings, Cindy, 12, 7-year-old Greg, and Terry, 5. When they decided to head out to the front garden at around 5:15 p.m, Matthew decided to remain in the backyard where the family had a new swing that had been tied to a tree by the little boy's father, Vernon Allred. He was enjoying playing on it, so stayed where he was. 15 minutes later, the children were called into the house, and while the others did as they were told, Matthew didn't go inside. Thinking he was still playing on the swing, his family went looking for him in the backyard, but he was nowhere to be seen. Virginia, his mother, asked his siblings if they'd seen him, but Cindy could only remember him playing on the swing. His parents knew how friendly their little boy was, as he often enjoyed hugs from strangers, so perhaps he was simply with a neighbour. But this was out of character. Virginia and her sister-in-law, who was visiting at the time, decided to have a walk round the block, but there was no sign of the little boy. Around this time, Vernon returned from an errand he'd run, so looked in the truck to see if his son had tagged along without him noticing. At 6 p.m, the family called the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office to report Matthew missing. Vernon managed to track down an ice cream truck around the time of the last sighting of the boy. The Allred's children were allowed to go to the van for a treat, but when asked if he'd seen Matthew, the ice cream vendor said that a boy matching his description had approached him, but he didn't have enough money for what he'd wanted, and he'd sent him away empty-handed. The family lived in a close-knit area, and a search got underway with around 800 locals helping. Matthew was easily identifiable, even with those who'd never met him, as he always wore his little brown suede cowboy boots, his favourite footwear. His father had bought them for him just a week beforehand, and although they were slightly too big for him, he rarely had them off, as he loved them so much. He was also wearing a white t-shirt and light blue cut-off jeans. The ice cream truck driver also drove round the streets playing his jingle, in hope that the boy would hear it and maybe follow it home. Unfortunately, by Tuesday 29th January, a 3-square-mile area had been searched numerous times, but the police and locals found nothing. Even the local canals and ponds were searched, but they too turned up nothing. The little boy who tried to buy the ice cream was traced, and it wasn't Matthew, but another neighbourhood child. Little Matthew had simply vanished. That night, Sheriff Malcolm Beard announced that this was no longer a case of a child simply wandering off, and the FBI were called in, but they didn't find any evidence of foul play, and with little else to go on, the case went cold. Vernon and Virginia were beside themselves with worry. For more than a decade, police didn't know if the boy was alive or dead. Their close neighbours, Raymond Rinaldo and Mary Piaz, an older couple, tried to console the family as best they could. They knew little Matthew well, as he used to ride their ponies in the garden, and the other Allred children were often seen at the property. There was no reason to suspect the couple of any misdemeanour. Or was there? 16 years later, on 4th June 1990, Ronaldo Piaz died aged 73. His wife, Mary, had predeceased him in 1983, and the house lay empty until 1992, when his daughter decided to sell the property. To get it ready for market, the house needed a few things done to it. One of these was to clear out the septic tank. This job fell to 19-year-old Timothy Scanlon. On the morning of Monday 31st December that year, he'd begun clearing it out when he made an unexpected discovery. After cracking the concrete seal and removing the lid beneath, he noticed something in the sludge. Thinking it was just a coconut or something, he began pumping out the sludge. After a short time, his hose became clogged. He began clearing it. Stuck inside the hose was a small jaw, ribs and pelvic and leg bones. The coconut had been a human skull. He called his father, who owned the company, and they went through the sludge. They came across a small brown cowboy boot. The police were called in, and they went through the slurry by hand, coming across more bones, the other cowboy boot, a tag from children's clothing, and a flashlight. Little Matthew, who'd been missing for 18 years, had been found. Investigators were sure the little boy couldn't have got into the tank by himself. Jack Espinosa of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office said, "The kid could not have put himself in there. He was killed and put in there afterwards." The Allreds were stunned. Ronaldo and his wife had been a lovely couple, and Virginia even stated that they thought of Matthew as being like their own grandson. On Monday, 11th January 1993, Matthew's death was recorded as undetermined homicidal violence, as no injuries were found on the bones. Robert Falsgaff of the Hillsborough County Medical Examiner's Office stated that the ruling was based on the fact someone had tried to cover up the death. During the post-mortem examination, all he could determine was that the bones belonged to a white male aged between 3 and 5, and little else. 3 days later, on 16th January, a memorial service was held for Matthew. The case is still classed as unsolved, even though it's believed Ronaldo probably killed him. But there are still no real answers. Had the boy died accidentally? Was it premeditated? Did Mary know the boy's body was in the septic tank? Matthew's parents had the cowboy boots bronzed as a memorial to their son. "I'm glad it's over," said Matthew's sister Cindy. "We don't have to wonder where he is anymore. All we can do is go on. We can't stop time. We can't wonder how it could have been." Vernon and Virginia separated 9 years after Matthew's disappearance, but neither will forget the loss of their son, nor will they forget his love of his little suede cowboy boots.